turned on your tap this morning without thinking about it. You've done it 10,000 times. Hot coffee, cold water, brushing your teeth. The tap is just there. It's always just there. So was mine. Until 4 months ago, when I turned it on and what came out was a trickle so thin I could block it with my thumb. Then nothing. Not because of a pipe. Not because of a drought somewhere far away. Because of something that happened right here, on the ground, in this county, that I couldn't explain for weeks. Until I started driving. Until I started asking. Until I found something I genuinely could not stop thinking about once I saw it. The drought wasn't the surprise. Droughts happen. North Carolina has had dry spells before. What surprised me was how fast everything gave out, how much faster than anyone expected. And when I finally understood why, when I saw what was different this time, I stopped being confused. I started being angry. I live in North Carolina, a small town, the kind that doesn't make the news for anything except high school football and the county fair. We're not special. We're not extreme. We're just a place that used to get rain. Used to. That's the phrase nobody wants to say out loud. North Carolina gets rain. That's not an opinion. It's geography. 40 to 80 inches a year depending on where you stand. Coast to mountains. One of the wettest states east of the Mississippi. The rivers here are old and wide. The soil is dark. People come from dry states and can't believe how green everything is. The Catawba River alone feeds drinking water to more than 2 million people across 24 counties in North and South Carolina. You don't think about that number until the river starts dropping. It's dropping. The last significant rainfall in my county was 11 months ago. 11. The river is running at levels people haven't seen in a generation, and even people who remember the dry spells before say this one feels different, faster, like something that was already fragile just gave. Farmers I've known my whole life are hauling water in tanks from neighboring counties. The creek behind the elementary school is a gravel bed. Charlotte is under Stage 2 mandatory restrictions. Lawn watering only 2 nights a week. No car washing. Fines starting at $100. Raleigh was already under restrictions. Durham followed. More than 2 million people watching the same numbers go down. And everyone I ask says the same thing. Climate. Atmosphere. Bad luck. These things happen. Yes, I know. But why is it hitting so much harder than the dry spells before? That's the question I couldn't let go. And the answer, when I finally found it, wasn't in the sky. It was on the ground, right outside my window. The thing that bothered me most wasn't the dry tap. It was the smell. North Carolina air has a smell. If you've lived here, you know it. That wet green smell, like something alive is always breathing nearby. Soil and bark and river water. It's been in the air my whole life. That smell is gone now. The air smells like dust, like somewhere that isn't here. 3 weeks after the tap ran dry, I started driving. Not for any reason except that I needed to see what I was living inside. I had this memory from when I was a kid, sitting in the back seat on a long drive somewhere across the state. I remember the roads going green, not just trees on the sides. A full canopy overhead, so thick the sky disappeared, like driving through a tunnel made of leaves. When it rained, you could hear it hitting the top of that canopy before a single drop reached the road. When it was dry and hot, people used to pull over just to sit underneath for a minute, just to feel the air change. I was looking for that road. I didn't find it. What I found instead, on every stretch I drove, were the hills that used to hold it. And those hills looked nothing like what I remembered. From the car, from the road, from everywhere I looked. The hills that used to be layered in green, thick and heavy, like the land itself had a coat on. That coat was gone. Hillside after hillside with nothing on them. Stumps, scrub grass, red clay showing through where the topsoil had run off. The occasional stand of young trees, skinny, maybe 15 years old, planted in rows so perfect you could tell it was a project, not a forest that grew on its own. I drove for 2 hours and came home quieter than I'd left. My neighbor Dale, 74, been on his land since before I was born, was sitting on his porch when I pulled in. I asked him about the hills. He said when he moved here, he could sit on that same porch in the evening and hear the creek through the trees. Just hear it, running, moving, alive somewhere in all that green. Now he can't hear it anymore. He said it got quiet before it got dry. He didn't connect it to the drought. Neither had I. I came inside and the woman next door called. Her well was acting strange. Running slower than usual, she said. I told her I'd look into it. I had no idea I was already looking into it. Not until I understood something that changed everything about how I was reading what was happening around me. North Carolina has survived dry spells before. The land has come back. So what made this time different? Same state. Similar atmospheric patterns to droughts before. But the Catawba was dropping faster. The soil cracked before summer even started. Farmers who'd made it through previous dry spells were already hauling water by June. Why? Same drought, different outcome. What changed? I started asking the oldest people I could find. Farmers, families who'd been on the same land for generations. When they first noticed the land starting to feel different. Not the weather, the land itself, its ability to hold on. Every single one of them pointed to the same period. The same decades when the tree cover started thinning, when the leaf canopy along the back roads started breaking up, when the hills started losing their coat. And that's when I started understanding what a living forest was actually doing, quietly, for free, every single day, that nobody put in a permit application. Trees pull moisture from deep in the ground through their roots and release it into the air through their leaves, hundreds of gallons per tree, every single day. That moisture rises, cools, and falls back down as rain, not somewhere else, here. And when rain does arrive, even a little, forested land absorbs it, holds it, feeds it slowly back into the ground. It acts like a sponge. A cleared hillside sheds it. Straight off the clay, straight into the river, gone before the ground even has a chance. Same rain, two completely different outcomes depending on what's on that land. So when this drought came, same atmospheric patterns as before. It hit land that no longer had the same ability to hold on. Whatever moisture arrived ran off instead of soaking in. The Catawba dropped faster because the land feeding it had lost its capacity to hold water between rain events. The drought didn't get worse. The land got less prepared for it. Your trees are your drought insurance, and we cashed them in, one permit at a time, for decades. And then the bill arrived. Stage 2. Mandatory restrictions. That's what the notice said. And I stood there holding it, thinking about everything I'd just understood. And the numbers looked different now. Lawn watering only between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m., 2 days a week. No washing your car, no filling a pool. Fines starting at $100. We are paying fines, real money, from real wallets, for watering our lawns during a drought that the land we stripped bare is making worse. Farmers are paying to haul water in tanks from neighboring counties. The county is paying to manage reservoir levels that wouldn't be this low if the hillsides around them still had their coat on. Every dollar spent adjusting to this drought is a dollar that wouldn't need to be spent if the trees were still there. I called the county water authority that same day. Reservoir at critically low capacity, monitoring the situation. I asked why it was dropping so much faster than the dry spells before. There was a pause. A long one. We're monitoring the situation. I don't think she was being evasive. I think she genuinely didn't know what to say. Because the honest answer, the land we're managing this drought on today is not the same land that managed the droughts before, is not something a county water authority is set up to say out loud. I hung up, and then I remembered the call from the woman next door, her well running slower. I told her I'd look into it. I had no idea what I was already looking at. The groundwater that feeds her well, and feeds the Catawba, and feeds the reservoir. It doesn't just come from rain falling directly into it. It comes from rain soaking slowly through soil and root systems and forest floor, filtering down over weeks and months until it reaches the water table. Forested land does that. Cleared land sheds the water before it ever has a chance to sink. Without the trees, the aquifer doesn't get recharged. The reservoir gets less groundwater feeding it from the hills. The well drops. The river drops. The tap runs dry. Her well. The Catawba. My tap. The fine sitting on my kitchen counter. All of it connected to the same hillside I'd been not noticing for years. I adjusted. We all adjusted. We just didn't understand yet what we were adjusting to. Here's what nobody is saying out loud. Not in the newsletters, not at the county meetings, not in the press releases. You can replant trees. People are replanting trees. Signs on the highway, programs with hopeful names, quarterly progress reports, and replanting matters genuinely. A tulip poplar or a white oak planted today will eventually help the land hold moisture again. In 40 years, maybe 50, but not one of those programs says anything about the trees still standing right now, the ones doing the job today, still pulling moisture from the ground, still giving whatever rain arrives somewhere to go instead of running straight off the clay, still feeding the aquifer that feeds the wells that feed the taps. There are no campaigns for those trees, no emergency meetings, just the same permit process that cleared everything else. Still running, still approving, still moving on, while everyone plants seedlings and calls it progress. We're planting with one hand and signing permits with the other. And that's what makes me angry. Not the drought, not the dry tap. The fact that we are spending money adjusting to a problem we could have spent far less money preventing. $100 in fines. Water tanks from 2 counties over. Reservoir management budget stretched thin. Agricultural losses that don't show up on a single permit application but show up everywhere else. The trees that are still standing are still free, still doing the job, still asking for nothing, and nobody is counting that. I still fill water at my neighbor's place. 4 containers every few days. Her well is holding, for now. I didn't expect to find anything hopeful at the end of all this, but I did. There's a county conservation effort about 3 miles from where I live. Quiet. No press releases. Just a group of landowners working with the county to identify the standing trees, still doing the most work for the watershed, mapping them, giving them some protection while the permits that usually clear them get a second look. There's also talk, early, nothing decided, of the county reviewing how tree removal permits get approved, whether the drought impact gets factored in before a permit goes through, whether the cost to the aquifer shows up somewhere on the application the way the timber value does. And alongside all of that, they've started putting eastern red cedar and post oak in the ground on the cleared sections. Eastern red cedar is drought tolerant, grows steadily without drawing down what little water the ground still has, and once established asks almost nothing from the land. Post oak has roots that go deep enough to find water other trees can't reach. And deep roots mean the soil above them stays porous, stays open, stays ready to absorb whatever rain does come. It's a small adjustment, the kind that doesn't make the news, but it's the kind that compounds. Quietly, slowly, the same way the problem did. I drive past those hillsides sometimes and try to picture them with their coat back on. The green tunnel over the road. The sound of rain hitting leaves before it hits the ground. The creek you could hear from the porch before it got quiet. It doesn't look like that yet, but somewhere in this county, on a few cleared hillsides, the adjustment has already started. If you want to keep thinking about what else is still adjusting and what's still worth paying attention to, subscribe. That's the only thing I'll ever ask.